Whenever I say that MMA is a young man's sport, just know that I am not talking about Yoel Romero. If you were to watch just a silhouette of Yoel fighting, you would think that he is a 21-year-old on the super soldier serum. I don't care how much I'm getting paid. If I'm fighting someone with the nickname Soldier of God, I am leaving the cage. Yoel Romero is probably one of the best to never do it. He couldn't get over his Robert Whittaker problem, which is nothing to be ashamed of. It's Robert Whittaker after all. I don't believe for a second that Yoel Romero is natural. I just don't. I really want to believe that he is one in a million. But come on, look at his traps. Yoel's traps are said to be the reason why he didn't become paralyzed after his injury in 2011, and I believe it. These traps are the results of hundreds and hundreds of shrugs. His workouts before his UFC 213 fight against Robert Whittaker is probably the most insane open workout I've ever seen. Yoel starts off by doing a split and starts doing these Super Mario hops. One of them was so high that he jumped out of frame. He starts shadow boxing and then does a burpee into a flying knee. This entire thing was just Yoel showing off his athletic ability and, in my opinion, to evoke fear in Robert Whittaker. No way he watched this and didn't feel a little bit more nervous. How about that time that Yoel broke his orbital bone and the UFC doctor that was examining him said that his tendons are 4 times stronger than the average person's? First off, I'm going to brush past the doctor's estimation because how do you even test for that? But it goes to show that Yoel is one of those genetic freaks that come once in a blue moon. The only other UFC fighter or former UFC fighter that I would consider a genetic freak is Brock Lesnar, of course. Here's a recent picture of him in his appearance against John Cena. His lats are about to take flight. This is him during his time in the octagon, still looking massive. That's pretty much it. I cannot think of anyone else in the UFC, present or former, that I would consider a genetic freak. Even though both of these guys are on steroids, you cannot get to this size without insane genetics. It really frustrates me whenever people dismiss their hard work and genetics and say it's all steroids. You could probably take triple the steroids and won't even be a third of the size. I've heard arguments to why steroids should be allowed in the UFC or some other hypothetical MMA organization. This would be an organization that doesn't drug test, and since everyone is on steroids, this would lead to the most insane fights and fighters. There's usually ethical concerns about this, but how ethical could you be about a sport that allows elbowing someone in the forehead? It comes to a point where we have to be real. I personally wouldn't watch it. There's enough degenerate variations of MMA where the only impressive thing is the fact they found people to partake in these events. I mean, fighting in a car, really? A man fighting multiple women? How about watching knights fight? Okay, that one is pretty cool. If you are someone who believes the UFC should stop drug testing, your wish may come true, since the UFC is now in charge of drug testing their own fighters. Their new program is managed by Drug Free Sport International, and they'll be the ones collecting the samples and doing the testing, but the UFC is in charge of who gets tested and how often, as well as what substances can trigger a suspension. This comes in handy with the speculation that Conor is making a return, and I have a pretty good guess on what substance the UFC won't test for. Since Yoel never won a belt, his natty status isn't really used against him too much, unless you're Tim Kennedy, who will use any reason to attack Yoel. It is not a secret that Tim Kennedy is not fond of Yoel after losing to him in 2011. When you're as successful as Yoel, you're going to have some enemies. Some of those enemies may try to assassinate you with a samurai sword. Alberto Blas, former bantamweight champion in Bare Knuckle FC, the organization where fighters go to die, tried to run over Yoel with his car twice, and when that didn't work out, he pulled a samurai sword from his trunk and swung it at Yoel. Yoel blocked it with his arm and hand, damaging a tendon. I just want to know what Yoel did to get Alberto that upset. This had to have been over a girl or something. Maybe she stopped by the gym one night and got starstruck by the Soldier of God. Yoel didn't even press charges on the guy, which makes me believe it was personal. Maybe Yoel thought he had it coming to him, or maybe he wanted to send a message to Colby Covington to not be a snitch. Yoel's personality is another reason why he's one of my favorites. He seems like a very likable guy from what I see during interviews. His interview before UFC 248, where he looks absolutely drained and still drops a Shia LaBeouf caliber inspirational message, is something I still think about till this day. I'm still pretty bummed out that he never got his hands on Michael Bisping. His callouts and promos for that were hilarious. Bisping would have absolutely got knocked out by Yoel, so it was probably best for him that it didn't happen. I could still hear Yoel saying, "I love you, Mike." Looking back at Yoel's UFC career, I would consider it a success. He debuted at 36 and won with a flying knee of Clifford Starks, winning him the knockout of the night. He took out big names like Derek Brunson, Rat Tavares, Tim Kennedy, Lyoto Machida, Ronaldo Souza when he was terrifying, Weidman, Rockhold, and only really lost to the best of the best. He has a Fight of the Year award for his second fight against Robert Whittaker, and in the middleweight division, I would say he's undoubtedly one of the best to never do it. He seems to be on a bit of a slip now. It seems like age is catching up to him, and it's showing in his fights. I'm still excited to see what Yoel does next. He won his 2 fights in Mike Perry's Dirty Boxing, which looks like MMA without grappling, and won his bare knuckle boxing debut. It seems like his days in the UFC are completely over. It seems like he's going to be bouncing around smaller promotions until he can't no more, which will then be the perfect time for Jake Paul to call him out. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. How would you guys rank Yoel's career? Okay, peace.